May the 4th be with you. May the 4th be... Sorry for the weird effect there. I definitely had... Oh, my microphone's way up. What happened there, my friends? Let me try to do a live edit here. Okay, there we go. Now it shouldn't be so blaring loud. I'm tinkering around with recording the podcast on a different device, so things may be a little wonky. And by the way, in case you're wondering, that music is Planet Techno Remix, DJ Z featuring Andy Brooks, which you can find on the totally fictional DJ Z album, The Early Years, Volumes 1, 2, 3. I am your ever-humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Today is Monday, the 4th of May. 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. May the 4th be with you. Bum, 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 bum. That's right, folks. The world's most fictitious religion is ever so quietly working its way towards world domination. Jediism. That's the subject of today's show, or at least this very first segment. This morning, I am your eccentric host, the incorrigible Mr. Zalpo, and before we tackle that ridiculous topic, because it's ridiculous even to me, right? Like, I am an ordained minister in two sort of nonsensical religions, one of which is also based on a movie, and there's a reason for that. But first, I wanted to recognize a couple of things that made my life slightly better, and or inspired me, and or I'm glad I saw on the interwebs. From April 30th, I reposted this on my Facebook page, because he's a British comic who's always been a bit of a hero, been of a, I wish I was that tall, kind of, I look up to you, literally and figuratively, I wish I was as tall as you, kind of, larger than life human being that I really admire. And that is the indomitable John Cleese. And he's got a meme floating around, and it's one of those classic great memes. There's this brilliantly silly yet serious portrait of John Cleese from what has to have been the mid-70s, and he looks young and robust and very seriously funny in his seriousness. And he's in a checkered jacket and a stripy tie, and there's a great quote. And the reason I'm reading it and sharing it with you is because, I don't know, maybe someone else needs to hear it too. I needed to hear it, and when I saw it a little bit earlier in the week, as we approached April 30th, I really appreciated it, and then I ended up, reposting it. And the quote reads, "Nothing will stop you from being creative so effectively as the fear of making a mistake." Trust me, dear friends and listeners, I know what that means and what that's like, and I know what it feels to be filled with potential content that is there. Like, the words are sitting there somewhere in the back of your head, or in the middle of your skull, or in the, in the cockles of your heart. But you're afraid of getting it wrong, and therefore it just won't flow. You won't let it come out. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's funny because even I, none of us is perfect. None of us is living the exemplar life that we all aspire to. Because if we were, we would be transformed into, if we were really truly living up to the example set for us by those kinds of people that we reference with the allegorical, metaphorical individuals we know as Jesus Christ, Buddha, Krishna, etc. If we lived up to those examples, we would be already transformed into beings of light and be occupied with much more, important and perhaps much more grand, much less mundane and materialistic sets of priorities and agendas elsewhere, in some other dimensional aspect of this complex reality that isn't necessarily limited to existing here, but is integral to the manifestation of this material plane. Fear is one of those kinds of entities, and it plays for Team Darkness. And unsaid in this kind of quote is the prompt, the inspiration to look your own little demon of fear in the eyes and tell it that no matter what it does, it will not stop you. And it's a big, long, complex thing that's invoked by these kinds of challenges, but isn't ever really explicitly said. But I'm unpacking it here for my own self-edification as well as, the sharing. But, and it relates it's a beautiful bridge to the very next thing that's on my wall of sharing on the FB. And that's that, if conquering fear is what's going to give us the confidence and the peace of mind and the momentum to work through the things that we want to do, then we really need to look at what those things are and what are we trying to really achieve. But as Natasha McKenna puts it, and I quote, "The goal is peace, comma, the means is forgiveness." End of quote. So simple, so succinct. The goal is peace. Unequivocally, no debating, no distractions, no arguing about what goals we're trying to achieve. Everything meaningful and worthy of pursuit is probably packed into that idea of peace. For we could not, would not, ever will achieve peace without equality, without real, true, meaningful justice, without, dare I say it, healing. And so if we can also look at this statement, if the goal is peace, in an if-then kind of way, right? If the goal is peace, then the means is forgiveness. Let us not forget that. Let us heed that instruction, friends. And that's challenging, right? Because, what is forgiveness? What does it mean? How does one enact it? And those are very challenging questions, for which I have very difficult answers. Like a Nike commercial, you just do it. You go inside, you go deep within, and you find that impossible to describe inner, immaterial, wordless, yet powerful tool that resides within us all, that is what we point to with the little tiny word called forgiveness. And you use that tool. You let it guide you in using it, perhaps. Okay, I saw another thing John Cleese posted. This was from his actual profile, and I shared it because it's kind of funny and ironic. He's sitting at home and he's joined a service called Cameo, which hilariously, and I almost can't believe that this exists in the world, but it's a platform for would-be celebrities and actual celebrities and has-been celebrities and everything in between, including undiscovered, yet-to-be-discovered celebrities, to provide for others willing to spend whatever it costs. And it's usually the one time I went and checked it out, the price points were ranging from $25 to $100. Just drop me $100 right now and I'll do this thing for you. And the thing that is being offered is video content. Drop me some money and I will give you a shout out. And that's sort of the default explanation. But literally others were offering, I'll read some sides that you need a voice actor to read some lines of dialogue for you. I'll do it. And it's, it'll cost you this much. It's fascinating. And it's the world to come to. And John Cleese has a really funny promo for his services now available on Cameo. And no, Cameo's not paying me to say that, although if Cameo would, they want to sponsor the show. Anybody who's out there with money to sponsor my show and the wherewithal to let me run it the way I bloody well motherfucking please without being an example of, big corporate greed, incursion of aggregate corruption, then you're welcome to pitch me. But if you can't pass that bar, then you can go bugger off with all your money. Because if you're going to try and change me and change the way I do my show, I will throw the money in your face. But I digress. Everyone has their price, the saying goes. I have yet to be bought, I swear to you. But then again, no one's offered me millions and millions of dollars yet. So it is yet to be determined. And you know what? I would be the first to own up to you guys. If someone rolls up to me next week and it's like, yo, Mr. Z, I've been checking your words and I got $3 million right here ready to deposit in your account. Just do what I want to. I'll be like, as long as I can separate the two brands, service your brand, do it that way, and then still be me and be able to make fun of you, I'll take the money. If you can't live with that, here's your money. Fuck off. It's just money, yo. Anyways. And yeah, to some people, that's like the most important thing ever. And trust me, it is not lost on me, friends. The context in which I say that, right? 30 million Americans, just in America, out of work and taking unemployment. Meanwhile, there is an untold, unknown, uncounted number of human beings who love America, who live in America, but who are not citizens of America quite yet, but are legal, law-abiding participants in the community who, thanks to 45's penchant for not-so-racist, not-so-inflammatory, not-so-controversial preferences, he has decreed that, people with green cards, such as myself, to out myself out of that closet, will be susceptible to deportation should they become burdens of the state. Well, fuck me if the state didn't just force the entire country on its knees to become burdens of the state. We'll talk about more. We'll talk about that some more in a future segment dropping a little later today, which will be called Caveat du Jour, where I really am gonna just nail down. I've been very speculative and open-ended about my thoughts about this current historical epoch we're living through, because mostly I was waiting to determine through observation and through eliminating of all the political nonsense and just looking at what objective facts I can find and verify for myself to determine what I really think is actually going on. So I've been playing ball on the speculative end, but I'm gonna lay down my real, genuine, here's what I actually think is actually going on and why I'm behaving accordingly, sort of thoughts, either later today or first thing tomorrow morning, one of the two. We'll see how it plays out. But today, this segment right now, as of this recording at 10:42, I just wanted to acknowledge something that many people haven't really caught on to yet, but it's been going on for damn near a whole decade or more. Monday, Monday, May the 4th, is officially, quote-unquote, Star Wars Day for 2020. And of course, it's May the 4th because then you can say, May the 4th be with you. And there's even a t-shirt and a logo, and I guess I should steal this. If I had the production staff to do a custom thing every day in video format for this show, the way I hope to and aspire to one day, I would definitely have been just stealing the May the 4th GIF. I like this one with the flowing stars in the background. Pretty awesome. It's like you're approaching warp speed. Or you're about to warp into light speed, or whatever the right techno babble is for this particular franchise. No offense. I am, for the record, an older school, OG, first gen. I was there when the first movies came out. kind of fan. And I'm also sort of like a new age second, nouveau wave fan from the mid-90s as we built up in anticipation towards the re-release and the supposed expansion of the franchise. And I was there during the controversial, and I was like literally at the front lines bitching and moaning about it from like the get-go during the controversial everybody hates what's his name years. Sorry, I totally just blanked on his name. Jar Jar. Everybody hates Jar Jar. Remember that? I was there, man, and I was guilty of spreading some hate. I was really biased against the Jar Jar. I think with some hindsight, I get what they were trying to do, and it was just a bad set of choices. It was too many weird choices all in one character, and it was just not, it didn't live up to the tone that we were used to from the franchise, that even though it was coming from its originator. But I digress. We are now in 2020, and seriously, like Star Wars and being a fan of it has escalated to a whole new level. I mean, and it's not new. This is not breaking news. I'm just acknowledging it because I've not addressed it on the show before. But for some time, despite the fact that I'm an ordained minister in the Universal Internet Life Church, which has been around for, I think, dare I say, nearly 30 years, for almost as long as the internet has been around. We have the church. It's a very loose and to the best of my understanding, very decentralized or a disorganized religion. In as much as that, I've never attended a meeting, I've never been to a Zoom, I've never had one conversation with another member. I just know I'm in a registrar, and that because my name is on that database, I have the right in whatever states that recognize it, whatever principalities and nations that recognize Universal Internet Life Church as a real religion, to marry others and exercise whatever other fundamental religious, what are they called? Not exorcisms. To exercise religious rights, whatever are the generic ones defined by that thing that says that, if you call yourself a religion, you can do these things. For those that did not know, Jediism, or the real-world religion of being a Jedi, has existed for some time. From the Wikipedia page, I read to you, quote, Path of the Jedi redirects here. Oh, that's just a disambiguation thing. Jediism, or Jedism, is a philosophy, I mispronounced that, is a philosophy mainly based on the depiction of the Jedi characters in Star Wars media. Jediism attracted public attention in 2001 when a number of people recorded their religion as Jedi on the national census. I'm never sure what the consensus is on the plural of multiple censusisms? I'm not sure. Jediism is inspired by certain elements of Star Wars, namely the fictional religion of the Jedi. Early websites dedicated to bringing up a belief system from the Star Wars films were, quote, the Jedi religion and regulations, and, quote, Jediism. These websites cited the Jedi Code, consisting of 21 maxims, as a starting point for a real Jedi belief system. The real-world Jediism movement has no founder or central structure. So that's been going on for a little while. And of course, I'm making a joke. I'm teasing that they are quietly marching towards some sort of global dominance. But up there with the flying spaghetti monster religion, of which I am not directly, officially, professionally associated with, although I admire, because that's a bold stroke of absurdism. Like, let's make God a flying bundle of spaghettis with meatballs for eyes, and call that God, and build a religion that we qualify in the world's multiple plurals for census as a real religion, right? So To the best of my understanding, in at least the UK, the Jedi religion as something you can declare yourself to be is accepted and normalized. Have they filed paperwork in America? I don't know. Are there people in America who self-declare themselves on the path of the Jedi and determine for their own sake that, as well as any other label, should be the label that they literally adopt in real life as the religion they claim to belong to? And when you cross-reference that with some of the other fictional real religions, of which, my other ordained ministry is my more favorite. I'm actually wearing my official robes this moment. For as always, my dear friends and listeners, I'm coming to you semi-live, as in I am broadcasting this live as I record it for posterity from my converted guest bedroom / office in my pajamas, wearing my Dudism or Latter-day Church of Dude robe, right? Because every proper Dudist must have a serious lounging robe in which they may acknowledge that the dude abides. And I do acknowledge and testify, dear friends and listeners, that the dude abides, and that somewhere in every community there is a dude, recognized or otherwise, taking it easy there for the rest of us, and that it behooves you, if you do not know who the dude is in your circle, to check if you yourself are not that dude. If the calling is not there for you, then never mind it. But if it is, and you've been neglecting it, by all means, hit me up. I've got some recommendations. I'm a very independent dude. I've yet to ever attend an actual Dudism official meeting. I don't spend any time on the boards or the forums or the website. I haven't even paid for any of the official books published by Dudists, such as The Tao of the Dude, I believe is one of the titles available, although I'm very interested in getting those. I just filled out a form, swore an allegiance, and got my diploma, which I had a physical form at one point. It's meant to be on my backdrop of, for when I do, my live podcasts in video form or whatever. It's there, and it's going to be on the wall. But I digress. Why do I want to open today's multi-segment show with some discussion about that? Because I think these fake religions, if we can call it that, are beautiful examples of absurdism in real life, be inspiring to me in as much as that I do indeed intend to write about fictional religions that get away with being real religions. For example, Trumpism. For those who do not know, I'm ever so slowly bootstrapping into existence a book series, which will also aspire to be a graphic novel series, which will also aspire to be an animated series. How do you say that correctly? An animated cartoon series? I do like an animated animation series. There we go. An animated animation series, in which I explore the various adventures of different characters living within the oppressive system of an empire that might theoretically rise out of the current moment, and what life would be like in 60 to 100 years from now, living under the initial second generation of Trump family politico agents or actors, or part of that what do we call it? American dynasty, really returning into politics and demanding that the great experiment of a Trumptopian empire be initiated, and how we adjust, and how we will have been perfectly conditioned and ready for it when it comes about, so much so that we'll be like, aha, it's about effing time, and that we're in the process of getting there now, right? So, in that world, Jediism and Dudism and some some other fictional sets of religions will have become serious, some sort of like Trumpopian. Trump religion has become the mainstream state-sponsored organized religion. And everything else, even the Catholics, right? Even the Catholics and the Jews and the primary ones that we all sort of take for granted nowadays, have all kind of gone semi-underground as fringe religions. And the really, really absurdist ones like Jediism and Dudism and all the ones that are, to some degree or another, an attempt at satire or satirical commentary or spoofing or parodying, how do you conjugate that one? To parody, that action against organized religions, become very, very serious in their status as underground, state-banned, criminalized organizations that have been made evil criminal organizations through decree by the central state. So stay tuned for that shit. Those stories may or may not be dropping sometime in the next 9 months, as I slowly cobble away some words on the daily about those. But I wanted to talk about it on the podcast today, A, for shits and giggles, B, for the meta self-reference of it, and C, to be able to share this morning. Inspiration comes in all kinds of packages, right? And truths that are being communicated to us from the source of what we may correctly call divine inspiration. Those truths, they don't mind being buried or couched or ensconced or embedded in nonsense or in things that may be considered false or outrageous or fictional. For as the legendary or legend, is it a legend or is it a legendary, it's a legendary mythological parable, reminds us, and I forget what society this comes from, but there is some parable out there that it might be Native American indigenous people. It's a parable or a spiritual warning story that describes God seeking out the perfect place to hide the divine truth. I don't want to call it the absolute truth because I don't like that label, right? As you may or may not recall, I have a very specific understanding of what absolutism is and how it functions in our relativistic universe. But divine truth, whatever that may be, God sought out to hide it in plain sight from us. And curiously, in God's wisdom, God chose the deepest depths within our own mortal self to hide it, because in God's words attributed in the story, it's the last place man will look. It's the last place you and I, whether you're male or female, or one of the many in-between identity labels, it's the last place anyone looks for divine truth. Deep within, behind the individual experience and name, face, history, identity label box. And as we move forward, I think sometimes, maybe, divinity gets dressed up, divinely inspired messages get dressed up as all kinds of things. And I don't say that to make any grandiose superiority, elitist claim about my own work, but rather the universal, it's the universal truth that we all have that potential inside us that is a true leveling of the playing field and a really, really difficult, challenging truth to wrap our brains around. That even the most mundanely asinine sounding one of us, bless our hearts, we all have the opportunity to sound that way to others, don't we? But even the lowest of the low, they are the divine truth embodied in some profoundly flawed human envelope. And so, if that is true, I don't pretend to know absolutely that is true. I don't demand that you accept that that is true just because I'm telling you. I'm sharing with you, I suspect very seriously, and I encourage you to investigate on your own terms whether or not that is true. And then, let us expand from it theoretically. If that is true, then any human individual, even some of the weirdest or the most unusual, may have, verily, as Shakespeare may have said, may have something important to communicate. That it does not come from them. That does not originate directly from their limited life experience, but rather from that cosmic and cosmological universal source. We can get into all kinds of weird levels of detail about a theory that stipulates that. But in terms of May the 4th be with you, I do think that there are some delightful things to be gleaned from especially the original Star Wars movies. Now, there is that whole argument coming from the conspiracy theory community and its set of followers that anything Hollywood is evil and corrupt and is loaded with negative, damaging, brainwashing content. Now, while this criticism may actually hold true for some percentage of the content out there in the world, and this criticism may also hold true for some percentage of any given individual project's content. In other words, corruption can get anywhere. That is true. But I think also can divinity. And an enlightened view is broad enough to comprehend that everyone is the stage for consciousness to dwell in this tumultuous process of coming to terms with the duality of our nature, which is that I have the light and the dark within me. Some of the newer episodes of Star Wars go to some, interesting lengths to point that out, which to some people read as sort of like, who cares? We've heard that all before. While to others are a profound, interesting, and revealing and or inspiring new way of expressing those ancient truths. These, almost trivial spiritual profundities. These almost stereotypically overused, like yin and yang, bro. It's really easy to forget that it is and, not either or, and that and has a power of unifying. That's why in theater, we work with yes and it's one of the central tools, and it sounds like an easy and lame thing to pseudo-teach, but it's also a really, really powerful tool that in real life, when I've practiced it, being able to yes and has prevented me from getting into no but or no, denial sort of confrontationalism. And get out of, being able to work my way out of, think my way out of, negotiate my way out of, feel my way out of, intuit my way out of, otherwise dead-endy sort of conflict-oriented circumstances that have arisen over time. So what am I trying to say? As I've waxed philosophical before on previous episodes, any statement about absolutism, like all of media is absolutely corrupt and evil, that literally cannot be true. Occam's razor, bro. Like it can't be. Some percentage of people out there making media have to be truly mundane and innocent of all nefariousness, as well as innocent of all higher aspirational divine influences. And some percentage of them must be earnestly, divinely inspired artists creating earnest, divinely inspired art. The full spectrum of it must exist, because it is up and down, not up or down. It is heaven and hell, not heaven or hell. It is yin and yang. And this is something that I learned very difficultly, very slowly, very almost begrudgingly through the process of investigating and then rejecting organized religions. And then discerning for myself why I had to reject them. Not just rejecting them and burning those bridges entirely or throwing the baby out with the bathwater and killing it. The baby being the profound divine truths that can be found to be escorted, entrenched, embedded, housed, being carried forth by not just any one organized religion, but all the various organized religions. Because remember, one of the most profound things that is attributed to God, according to almost every tradition out there, God at some point informed us, the human species, that whenever 2 or 3 or more of us gather in earnest and enthusiastic praise or practice or spiritual communion, then divinity is present. And I think that idea, that phenomena, that may be something organic. That may be something that is and always has been our birthright. In other words, it is inborn in us. It is a skill or a facility or a capacity or a modality or an ability that we are all born with. And that, for whatever tragic and idiotic reason, we have been conditioned away from. We have been lied to and convinced to dismiss as fantasy, as magical happy talk, right? When it is not. When it is powerfully true that when 2 or more of us gather with a common, universal, and spiritually passionate focus, and it helps, of course, with the overt invocation of whatever real divinity is, as opposed to some imagined construct, then real divinity shows up. Real divinity works through us. Because it always is anyways. Even when it's being the evil, horrible, dark guys, the bad guys of Team Darkness. Even when it has to be the very victim of its own evil. For as that one parable, the egg, tries to show us, in its own terms, it is entirely possible that there is only ultimately one awareness, and that awareness is the thing that is everybody, good or bad, neutral or otherwise. To come full circle, if that is so, if that is the case, I could be wrong, anybody else who has come to that conclusion could be wrong, but there's a really strong number of people that have come to that conclusion and have written about it passionately and with great, deep, profound reason to have come to that conclusion. I myself am of the opinion that while I acknowledge that I could be wrong, I also think quite confidently that any individual, given an earnest effort to abdicate everything, including the very idea of ourself as we imagine ourself to be, that if we can abdicate that in a healthy way, not in a self-destructive, toxic way, but in a healthy, healing, bringing it up to the very light itself, which we must take on faith resides within us, then that's the challenge, right? Like you're stepping off a cliff and presuming that the bridge is there. A little bit like Indiana Jones and, which episode is that? Is it Temple of Doom? No, it's the other one. Temple of Doom is too soon in the series. It's the one where Sean Connery's his dad. Whatever that one's called, The Last Crusade. And they get to that part as they're getting into the center of the maze, or it's not really a maze, but they're getting through the 3 challenges, and they literally have to cross a chasm. A chasm? A great impossible voidy hole, right? A Grand Canyon in the middle of their path that appears to not have a bridge and yet they are being told there is a bridge. Everything about the way we observe the material realm is a test, because it is simultaneously empowering and beautiful and full of magic, and yet it is also eminently flat and void of all things, and a kind of limitation that prevents us from perceiving the cause of our own selves and of that which we are experiencing. That filter, that limitation, is what makes it a test, because then, we get asked or invited to take it on faith that those things are out there, that without them, this material realm would not be possible the way in which it exists now and the way in which we perceive it. And that our perceptions, as I always like to point out, have an inborn, natural, organically occurring ability to shift gears. We've just been ignored, deprived, conditioned to ignore and deprive ourselves of that capacity for so long that we take it for granted that it does not exist. And yet, it does. And who knows, maybe I'm wrong. And maybe there's nothing of value in any religion. Old school, new age, or totally fictitious. Maybe none of them have any beauty or power or truth embedded in them. But that's a horrible thought. And if the universe is a voting box manifestation machine that registers your belief and tries to make it real for you, why would you settle on that one? If we've got the ability to choose, why not choose the most profoundly magical, healing, transformational option out there? I don't know. But there seems to be a lot of effort being placed in talking us all into choosing the most mundane and boring of choices for what we choose to believe about this place, this reality, how it comes into existence, and how it operates. Now, why would we vote for that instead of a version bigger, larger, more potentially transformational and empowering? Why wouldn't we, if we had the choice? That's my question to you, friends. At any rate, I've been rambling on long enough. If whatever religion you belong to, I guess what I'm inviting with this episode is the following contemplation, the following thought. Whatever religion you belong to, you have to acknowledge that some part of it is largely fake. It's human beings aggrandizing, exaggerating, embellishing, putting on of spin and salesmanship and, forgive it for what it is, psychological manipulation. Because we have this horrible propensity to doing that to ourselves. We have this apparently ever-repeating capacity to fuck ourselves, to control ourselves, to oppress ourselves. To what end? As I've tried to illuminate before, it might be as simple as the addiction of, an addiction to, addiction. For more on that, make sure you jump around and check out some of my earliest episodes where I had not already sounded a bit like a broken record and really go into depth about some of these ideas. And of course, stay tuned for some future episodes where I will indeed sound like a broken record and repeat myself about some of these things and go into even deeper depth about them, I hope. But until that time, I humbly thank you for tuning in, and I say goodbye and namaste. And I will close out this show with DJ Zed's track featuring Deep House 101. And probably also, it's either Nesferatu or Andy Brooks. Because I have, the way the tool works, you're collaborating independently with one of a small selection of artists. But, a little remix outro music for your listening pleasure. And I wish you the best, and I thank you for listening, and I invite you to engage even more fully with the show. Stay tuned for an episode of Good Morning Trumptopia, dropping a little later today, as I'm about to go check into the news and gather my thoughts about what the fuck is actually going on in Trumptopia today. That's right, music fans. This is a track that you can dance to. So get the fuck up and dance! That was DJ Zed featuring Synthveratu, a remix of Wobble Trobble Wobble Mix, or something like that. I always fuck up the titles, and then when I export the files from the thingy where I mix them in, sometimes the files that I write, the titles for the files that I write don't transfer. I don't know. I have to record all this. Am I still recording? Yes, I am. 4 outtakes. Woohoo!